Well, I think my musical inspirations probably started when I was in high school, and I had some wonderful choral and band directors. Um, Kevin Klee, he was that band director that arranged a lot of things for his band. So he was quite an inspiration to me early on, just to see somebody that close to me writing writing stuff for his ensembles. Dr. Patricia Kennedy was one of the best at what she did. Constantly taking our choirs and vocal jazz groups to state contests, and it was just easy to be inspired in high school. Beyond that, I actually met Phil Mattson for the first time in my high school classroom, because Dr. Kennedy was smart enough to bring Phil in, and little did I know that would be one of the largest influences on me in my life. Um, so after high school, I really had no idea what I wanted to do with music. I just knew that I wanted to be surrounded with it. I ended up heading to Northwestern University, which was a wonderful place to be, but it didn't fit me very well. I was a classical voice major there, and beyond that, I lasted about a year, and then I ended up going to one of Phil Mattson's summer workshops that he has put on for, I think over 25 years now. And as soon as I heard Phil play, that was it. Um, it it was a life changing moment for me right there. Um, so after that workshop, I dropped Northwestern. I went to Phil Mattson's school that he had been leading out in Creston, Iowa, and was newly inspired to be a full musician there. I played lots of jazz and classical piano for the first time, really, in my life. I discovered that I loved jazz and classical piano. Beyond that, I after 2 years at Phil's school, I ended up studying with Dr. Steve Zagree, and actually was a jazz and classical piano major at Western Michigan University. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to keep up, with all the other piano players who had played since they were infants. I really hadn't been playing piano that long, but I knew that in order to do what I kind of felt was something so special to me, my writing, that in order to do that more successfully, I needed to really play stronger piano, to have a harmonic basis. And that's what Phil Mattson gave me. That's what Dr. Steve Zagree gave me. And then beyond that, I ended going to Miami. We called it Western Michigan South, because for a number of years, all of the amazing Western Michigan undergraduates like Greg Jaspers and Kate Reed and Christine Helfrich, who is now Christine Guter. There's a partnership between Western Michigan where they just kept sending people down to Miami. So I was really lucky to just be jet streamed down to the University of Miami for graduate school, and there I met and had the fortune of working with Larry Lappin, who is another legend, and Gary Lindsay, who was my writing mentor to this day. He's kind of my guru if I ever have a question about arranging or orchestration or anything. So I've just been really lucky to be inspired by a just a parade of amazing. I can't give enough superlatives for the people that I lucked out to be studying with in my life. In fact, it's almost, if I weren't doing anything good right now, I just think I would be dishonoring the fact that I lucked out to be studying with them. they really set me up to be doing what I'm doing today. Well, the SMV Vocal Jazz Camp, School for Music Vocations, that's the program that Phil Mattson created in Iowa. And about 13 years ago, I went up to Phil and asked him, I was a full-time faculty member there, really so great to be back there after having been a student there. And I asked Phil if it's possible for me to do the camps that he was kind of slowly not doing as many camps. And I figured, you know what? Maybe I'll give a shot at this. So I asked him for his blessing, and these School for Music Vocation camps were born 13 years ago. They've been all over the U.S. and Canada. They started actually in San Francisco in Northern California, and they've been in Denver, and they've been in Regina, Saskatchewan in Canada. And so nowadays we have 3 camps and possibly 4 in the summer of 2016. We have one, of course, is in Creston, Iowa at the School for Music Vocations. We have another camp up in San Jose, California, and that's at Archbishop Mitty High School. We have another camp in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, and that's a really wonderful camp. Led by Marty Cashin and Cynthia Wall up there, some dear friends who are amazing choral directors. And then we're going to start, I'm 95% sure we're going to start another camp location in Illinois, at Illinois Wesleyan University with Drew DeHaan. So these camps are connected with the college in Iowa. You know, I'm not a full-time faculty member there anymore, but they still have me on board to do these camps because, to be honest, it's really a passion of mine to be able to work with amazing students and directors from all over the place. So I'm just so fortunate that they continue their partnership with me. And then lately, the last 6 years, my colleague Jason Smith, who was one of the Phil Mattson PM singers, it's about 6 years ago, he and I came up with the idea of having camps specifically geared towards vocal jazz directors. And, there are some workshops for vocal jazz directors, but they tend to be a more how to direct, and maybe about literature, and maybe a little bit about theory. And our idea here was to create a camp where we could intensely have vocal jazz directors learn jazz piano and jazz harmony and jazz arranging from the inside out. Well, I think copyright needs to be discussed more at colleges. It is dealt with in music business classes, but most of the time it's dealt with in terms of composers and composition. So as an arranger, I mean, I'm certainly a composer as well, but as an arranger, the amount or the ability to open up a book or talk with people about licensing and about copyright for arranging purposes was always very, very difficult to come by. And it's only been in the last handful of years where I gleaned more and more, mostly from other vocal jazz arrangers. It really is, it is the case that it was always very hard to break in as an arranger because unless you're one of the staff writers, for Hal Leonard or for Alfred, it's tricky, or for Shawnee, but I think especially these last few years, I've been going back and kind of relicensing and getting licensing for pieces. So I'm really proud to say that that all the pieces on my website are all properly licensed, and it's an important thing. Certainly, I think it's not. None of us have probably been squeaky clean in terms of how we went about learning. It's a process for sure, and I wish I knew more earlier, to be honest. It is a process, and I love that there is more talk about copyright lately. I think it's becoming easier for vocal jazz arrangers to understand and to make the proper connections. Specifically, Hal Leonard and Alfred Music are now offering links on their websites to make things so much easier. It used to be so daunting. I felt like I would never get a license, and I had tried to get licenses and was turned down a number of years ago. It was so daunting, and now it's so much easier, the process. So now every time somebody commissions me to write an arrangement, I am right on it in terms of getting the permission to arrange, usually through Hal Leonard or Alfred, but sometimes through a third source. And then, generally speaking, the following year I'll take a lot of those commissions and license them, and it works out well. I'm also really a huge fan of working with independent songwriters. I just wrote some charts on some Rosanna Eckert tunes. Rosanna is a fantastic songwriter from North Texas, of course, and it's a new partnership when you work with a songwriter who you admire and respect, and I think it's a win-win because we get their songs, the arranger gets their songs out to the public in a different way, furthers their music some as well. So I'm really fortunate to be working with people like Rosanna and Brian Eichenberger, who have arranged quite a number of tunes. Brian was the lead singer of the Four Freshmen, and quite an amazing songwriter himself. My advice would be to connect with people. It sounds like such simple advice, but I think if you care about the people who you're working with and working for, I think it reflects on you so well. I've been really adamant about whatever I do in the music business to make sure that I have really good a good connection with people, and that I care. I care certainly about what people are thinking, but I also, I really just care about people. And as soon as you start treating people in the music business like humans, then I really feel like the business part of it is easy after that, because your genuineness, is that a word? Genuineness, that comes across more than anything else. Connecting with people. I also, obviously, the professionalism goes without saying. If you're not showing up early to a performance, you're probably late. If you're not there, well in advance of the performance, and that reflects on you, obviously. If you're that person that's early every time to a gig, people notice. The people that you're playing with and singing with, they notice that. Just the professionalism aspect is so huge. The other advice I have is really about self-promotion. Nobody who is an independent arranger or a lot of independent musicians, many of us do not have agents. So you have to be your best self-promoter. And if you're not doing that, then nobody is promoting you and your music. So that's been a real challenge because it brings up other issues like how far is too far to promote yourself, and when you walk that line, are you crossing the line of self-promotion, and does it feel weird to you? And to be honest, a lot of self-promotion feels really awkward to me, and yet it's a part of the beast nowadays, especially with social media, and your online presence is probably the most important thing in the music business, and yet you kind of have to walk that line. I hope that I'm never seen as boastful when I post something on social media or otherwise online. It's just a tricky thing to navigate. But for young lions, I would suggest that you err on the side of promoting yourself a little too much, because you can always back that down a little bit. But if you're not promoting yourself enough, you might not be taking the proper steps to really to be seen. I think that's the most important thing, to be seen. Well, I love being a student of the game. My very first chart that I wrote that was published was I had listened. Basically, I binged on Gene Perling for probably about a week straight, and then after that, I sat down and wrote a chart that I dedicated to Gene. I've never met that wonderful man, but I felt like, after bathing in his music for a week, that's what I wanted to offer, is something that, as much as I could, that sounded like Gene, or something he would at least appreciate. So I love kind of soaking in other sounds. And I remember having a conversation with Phil Mattson about this, and because I was worried that I was going to sound like a lot of other people if I kept just trying to incorporate other people's techniques. And Phil said to me, Jeremy, don't worry about it. You will eventually sound like you, and you're a combination of. We're all combinations of all of our influences, and that really struck me. So the sound that I'm going for now, I don't know. To be honest, I know that voice leading is very important to me. Making sure that horizontal lines are going where they should be going, and if that means that my harmonic palette might be different than somebody else's, then so be it. I'm not even sure how that affects my harmonic palette, except I just know that for me, melody is king. The melody of the song that I'm arranging has to be very strong and prevalent, and whatever voicing technique I have, if it's not serving the melody, then I don't know. I give up on it immediately. I think I become too clever, as Peter Carlson, formerly of the Real Group, he told me once, Jeremy, I think sometimes you're too clever. And I thought, first of all, what do you mean by that, Peter? And secondly, I realized what he was saying is sometimes we arrangers get in our own ways because we think that something is maybe a better idea than it is. And to me, the tried and true method of knowing whether something fits in an arrangement is whether or not the actual song, whether the melody itself is still the most important part of that arrangement. So I like having play sessions when I first arrange a piece, Usually I try not to write anything on paper for the first day or two, and I just sit down at a keyboard or piano and just play. If I can do that and have these, these just little gems of ideas, then I kind of have a little collection of good ideas, and I can pick, or bad ideas, and I can pick and choose them as I please. So that's really, a nutshell version of my process. It's always about honoring the original song, and that doesn't necessarily mean that I will use the harmony, or that I won't make melodic changes occasionally, especially as a piece, as it goes on. I'll certainly alter the melody, as long as it's hopefully reasonably tasteful. That's the goal. But that's really my general approach to arranging. Well, the last 5 years or so since I started my doctorate, I guess I've written for orchestra before that and big band, but it really, really, really ignited a passion around 5 years ago when I started my doctorate at the University of Miami. It is the same process as when I arrange for vocal groups. I still sit down. I still have play sessions where I just like to try and be as free as I can before I'm focused on writing notes on a piece of paper. So the big difference for arranging for a singer and big band, or for a singer and orchestra, is not to get in the way of the singers. It's generally maybe the same process as I talked about in terms of vocal arranging. The melody is king, and so I try, if I'm writing for a vocal group, it's really, really imperative that the vocal group's harmonies are not just doubled in the instrumental parts, because if that's all you're doing, it's you can do that occasionally, but generally speaking, I try and play the orchestra or the big band. I try and play them against the vocal line, so that it complements the vocal line. If it's not complementing, then it can sometimes be too much, especially when you're writing for a vocal group, because there's so much harmony inherent in the vocal group. Unless the vocal group is singing mostly unison, and then you can, the sky is the limit with your big band or your orchestra. You can do a lot more with that. But it's really, it's an interesting process, and I've heard from so many vocal groups and from so many vocalists who tell me that the people who write big band and orchestra charts for them get in the way of their vocal part. And that has really, really struck a chord with me. I do not want to write something that is not a proper bed for the singers to be singing on top of. Anything that's getting in the way usually just needs to be erased from the arrangement. And I think if we as arrangers used erasers and the delete key more often, I think we would probably be better served. Simplicity is very often the best way to go. But I think when I was 20 years old, or in my early to mid 20s, nobody could tell me that. I wrote with a heavy hand. I wrote way too many notes, and I think as I'm starting to get older, and I am getting older, then the goal for me is to do more with less, and so that especially with a big band and orchestra, that's even bigger, an even bigger goal, because there are so many instruments to write for. first to Behind the Mic for inviting me to have this interview, and it's been a wonderful time, and I just so appreciate that this resource is out there for vocal jazz educators to partake of. When you look back at the interviews that have been done, these are the biggest names in the vocal jazz world, and so I'm truly humbled and feel so fortunate to have been asked to do this. Beyond that, I certainly want to thank the directors who have supported me as an arranger, and certainly as an independent arranger who is not a staff writer for one of the major companies. It's so crucial. Every director who purchases charts from me, every director who attends a vocal jazz camp or a jazz harmony retreat, every time a director sends students to those camps, that is supporting me and everything that certainly everything that I hope to stand for. As I had mentioned earlier, I'm so amazingly fortunate to have had the mentors that I've had. So I give a huge thank you to Phil Mattson, who has repeatedly changed my life over the years. I thank Jason Smith and thank Steve Zagree, who also has quite frankly changed the trajectory of my life. Larry Lappin and Gary Lindsay, my writing guru. Diana Spradling, my vocal pedagogy guru, who I talk with quite often about any pedagogical questions I have. These are names that we all probably know as being just some of the amazing people in our world and in my world as well. So it's a huge thank you to my mentors. My parents, this isn't a nomination speech in any way, but certainly my parents, who have been so supportive of me my entire life through my musical journey, and certainly my girlfriend Catherine, who is just an amazing musician in her own right and inspires me every day and is a huge strength for me. So thank you so much, and I've really enjoyed this time.